I want to bring up Jen Hamilton. I met Jen about 2.5 years ago. It was at a 3-day event, and it was actually, this 3-day event is kind of what kicked off the start of my new life, which is figuring out who I am as a person and what I'm doing here on earth. It wasn't that particular event that got me there, but it was what kind of kick-started me to start thinking about who I am and what I'm doing here on earth. And I met Jen there, and she's just, as you can see, she's got this beautiful smile. She's just a wonderful person, a great heart, and we just clicked immediately. So we got together, met each other for lunch, and then I asked her to come in and speak at the Legal Secretaries Association, and her topic was not how to be mean to people, but how to tell people what to do and have them still like you. And so it was really good. The secretaries really enjoyed that topic, and she just has a really fun way of speaking. And so when I told her about the Nonprofit Speaker Series, I hadn't realized that she has years and years of experience working in the nonprofit world. So we just kind of collaborated and said, what can be a topic that you can come in and speak about? And so this is one of the volunteers. Like, how do you find them? How do you get them to stay with you? So those are the keys. Now, Leah is a great example. I met Leah a year ago, and as you guys have seen Leah every time. She's volunteering for me, and the same with Amanda. Yes, with me every time. But Leah's been with me since last August, and I don't know why she keeps coming back, but she does. So, oh, thank you. Tell me more. So Jen is going to teach us how to find Leah's. Not Leah, she's mine. But she's going to teach us how to find Leah's and how to keep them, because it's really important. I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe Leah can give us some hints about what I'm doing. That's why she keeps coming back. But to keep them, it's really important, because once you establish those relationships with your volunteers, they're gold. You guys all know that. It's really important to keep them. So Jen's going to help us figure all of this out. And without further ado, let's welcome Jen Hamilton.
So don't touch this. Okay, sure. Don't want that. Stage is going to get me. Well, thank you. I'm so pleased to be here. As Linda mentioned, we had a wonderful time meeting, and it's just been a great friendship ever since, and continue to have our paths cross. So it's nice to be able to be with all of you tonight and to be able to honor Linda with the request for sharing this information. I always think it's fair for people to know why you should listen to me, and I think you should ask that question for anyone who's speaking or a book you're reading. Why should I listen to you? So I'm going to start with that, which is, as Linda mentioned, I do have a past and a long history in nonprofits. I've actually done nonprofit work for over 20 years, and Brody was nice enough to say, really? So anyone who's like, you're too young for that, you're my new best friend. But I started as a volunteer in college, actually even volunteering through the Girl Scouts, if I want to go back farther, but that's not where my 20 years starts. And just to give a little shout out of my little Girl Scout story, getting my silver award. Which is like the equivalent of Eagle Scout and Boy Scouts. Most people know about that. So not too shabby. Congratulations to you and your silver award as well. And then hopefully my daughter will be there one day. My background in particular in terms of the business side, and you'll hear a little bit more about this, I actually started as a CPA, and all my clients were nonprofits and or universities. By choice, I actually wanted to make a difference in the world by doing business and helping nonprofits do their business better. And that's where I got started. So I'll be speaking on the 23rd as well on the financial side of nonprofits. So that way you're not like, wait a second, what? How did that all work? So hopefully you'll come back to that as well. But as I was working about 60 hours a week with PricewaterhouseCoopers as an auditor, I thought, gosh, I think I should do more with my time. So I volunteered, because that's just the crazy kind of person I was. I volunteered and worked with different volunteer centers, and eventually changed my career out of accounting to work for Volunteer San Diego. And then I later worked for Excel Youth Zone. My role was to get youth to volunteer. I worked with AmeriCorps members, I worked with staff, I worked mostly with volunteers. And I actually had volunteers help me with running different programs, as well as one of my favorite stories is I had a contract for 7 years with California Department of Education where I would train teachers to have their students volunteer. I would also train them to bring in professional skills and whatnot. So one of the things that was required under this contract, the California Department of Education said, okay, we want you to do a 2-day conference for teachers, after-school providers, educators, etc., and even trainers of teachers. And they said, but here's the thing. In the past, we had a nonprofit do this, and they had a staff of 1 full-time and 7 part-time who pulled it off. But, you know, this little budget cut thing, so this was a couple years ago, although they still have issues, we're going to let you do it with just half of you. Good luck. I was like, okay. So I put it together with a team of 20 volunteers across the state of California. And luckily, we had the best conference they've ever had in terms of evaluations. And because of my lack of ability to hire other staff, we had the best budget. So you can pull off amazing things with volunteers. And the work that I'm doing now, as I mentioned, I'm on 2 boards. My company is called Institute for Mastering Success. And my co-founder, he and I both come from the nonprofit world and the education world. And what we did is we said, you know what? These skills of what we've done with students in class and volunteers, we get amazing results out of people that have to be there, like students, or that want to be there, like volunteers, and none of them are paid. Unless any of you got paid to go to school. I had to pay when I got into college. But we would get amazing results out of them. And so we decided to take the same kind of knowledge and do training in companies. And that's what we do now. So I'm excited to share this information because the training that I do to get employees to really be motivated to do their work right, professionally, and work well with others, it comes directly from my work in the nonprofit world with teachers and students and working with volunteers. So it's very exciting that the foundation of how I'm changing the corporate world comes out of the nonprofit world. So this is a little bit of background about me. And in particular, what I want to share with you is, to begin, I want to give you my promise. And this is a promise that I have in all of my trainings, whether they're live, like we're doing now, or online or whatnot. My promise is that what you'll have today is going to be applied to your life. This is practical, useful information because it's no fun to just show up and get nothing. So I want to make sure you know that you've got some steps and things. And even those of you who don't have volunteers, maybe you are a volunteer, I want you to consider whenever you're trying, kind of like Linda said, to get somebody else to do what you want, you need to find them, you need to keep them, you need to motivate them and recognize them. And so some of these things will apply whether or not you have a nonprofit, because I know there's some diversity in the room. And those of you who are a volunteer, you can also see for yourself, how can I be a better volunteer out of the information I share today? The other thing is, that's my promise, is that it's practical, but I can't totally make you do it. So I ask you to make a promise. I ask that you make a commitment to yourself to put what you learned today into practice. I actually will be sharing a little bit later. I help do this. So with all of my trainings, what we will do is, and usually companies pay for this, but you guys are lucky winners of the second parts of our training. We always do a 20-minute call afterwards, personal, one-on-one, so you guys will get to talk to me. We're going to talk about what you learned today, make sure any questions get answered, of course, because I want to make sure it makes sense. And then we're going to get an action plan. I'll help you think about what's something you're doing and how can you apply that into your life, whether it's getting kids motivated at home or whether it's getting volunteers motivated in your work. So I'm going to send around and pass out a sheet that you can sign up for that if you're interested. But I do that because of my commitment to make sure that you do take action. Okay. Now, let's get started. My notes are over there, so I'm just going to keep looking at it every once in a while. First is how to find volunteers. And with finding volunteers, one of the things that I like to share with people is look at who's already showing up. And I'm going to use Linda as an example. So Leah and Amanda are, we know, amazing volunteers. And one way to clone them, right, we want to clone them because I'm not allowed to give you away or you away to anybody. One way we want to clone them is to be able to ask them, who do you know? And that is the simplest and most effective way, is to get referrals from people who already care about your organization, whether it's the volunteers, whether it's the staff, and of course, your friends and family. Now, those of you who are starting a nonprofit or have started or any sort of organization whatsoever, you know this trick, right? When you need a board, who do you ask? People you know, your friends. And they get excited because of your passion. So the best way to find volunteers is find people who are already bought into and already passionate about what you do, and ask them, who do you know that is, give them specifics, maybe a certain skill or a certain thing, or they're just excited and want to help. So that's my best favorite trick for finding volunteers. The other thing I would say is, don't hesitate to get a student involved. I mentioned that my history is working with getting students to volunteer from kindergarten all the way through college. And you have a volunteer run, you also work with students, not just parents. I think most people think of parents, but you've got counselors that are, this big to this big, essentially, because my daughter's already excited to be one day. So students are incredible and often underlooked, like, oh, they can't do it, they're not old enough, or they're not smart enough, or responsible enough. There's a lot of excuses. And honestly, if you apply these same things to your students, you're going to have the same results. There are some limitations sometimes with students in terms of they might have some certain driving requirements depending on how old they are, if they're in college or whatnot, or if they're in college, if they're in high school, they might have driving issues. If they're in college, they might have some internship requirements or whatnot that you need to sign. But work it out with them and have a contract, whether it's signed or not, a legal contract, but have an agreement, just like you would with an adult. And we'll go into some more of those details. But students are a great way. And what's great about college students in particular is that the local universities here, they have if you go to like the Career Center, they have a job board, online job board, but you also can post volunteer opportunities or internship opportunities. And some bigger, more in-depth kind of volunteer things like getting social media out there for your upcoming event or overall, that's a great one for a college student. There are incredible different ways for them to apply their skills and their knowledge. And so that's always a nice little trick, is that you can post basically right on the job board, just as if you were an employer. And again, the local universities here have that available. You're like, writing this down. The other thing too, and this is really good for a group or a big event like the event that you guys are doing in a week and a half, is to get groups. There are certain fraternities and sororities that have community service requirements. So you can even just call around and say, which ones have it? And you'll start to find that. So, and then the other thing too, and this is, again, I'm just thinking events because we're talking about it. And this is more in the planning stages. There is at San Diego State, and I think there is another local community college as well, might be Southwestern, that they have an event planning or event management degree. And so they are incredible volunteers. I've run my conference, I've run whole community events with volunteers out of that, because they're getting real experience, and if you let them just go for it and really take on some logistics or things, it's incredible experience that a for-profit probably won't let them do, but you can, right? So it's a great place to find them. You guys are great resources too. Where else have you found some volunteers that I haven't mentioned?
Volunteer Match.
Perfect. Good one. Craigslist, yep. Facebook, perfect. And then Hands-On Network, and that's where Volunteer San Diego was out of. Hands-On Network, Volunteer Match, those kinds of things. You can post the positions, just like I was saying with college. Hands-On Network is across the country, and they have different volunteer opportunities. So if I always encourage people to look virtually too. Can you have someone be a virtual volunteer? I had 2 volunteers from Spain. Doesn't matter, they can do social media from Spain. So be open to where can you find them. Any others? Last ideas? Yeah, high schools too sometimes have community service requirements, which helps too. Like Key Club is one. Yep, Key Club is one. If you haven't.
Key Club reached out to us to volunteer for a little
Perfect.
bit. They're on board.
Very good. Very good. Awesome. Key Club? K-E-Y, like a key into the door. Uh-huh. It's out of Kiwanis. It's a program out of Kiwanis. It's their youth program. Yeah, Rotary has one too. They have a youth program too. I forget. I think they're called Interact. This is dusting off the cobweb. Sorry, it's been a little while on that one.
Oh, and also for people who can't pay their traffic fines, they have to do community service.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, there are a lot. That's a good point too. There, at Volunteer San Diego, as you can imagine, we would get a lot of people calling saying, "I have court-ordered hours for community service," and some of our nonprofits were concerned. A youth nonprofit might be concerned because you think the worst, and yet we would have volunteers who had skateboarding tickets. I personally didn't have a problem with someone who had a skateboarding accident, like skateboarding on a railing, doing my volunteering, or, traffic fine. Would I put them, a traffic fine person, would I put them in a car driving my people? No. So just find something appropriate. The other thing, too, is Mission Edge San Diego just launched I think it's called Mission Match. And Mission Match, if I'm going to hopefully get this right, they are skilled volunteers like out of Qualcomm who are looking to do more higher level skilled type of work. So you can look for skilled volunteers in San Diego as well to be able to find that. And then there's some board match too if you're looking for board members. Yep.
I've heard a lot from military. They're from military companies. I've heard a lot about that.
Yep.
Many hours or like for
Well, not
hours.
mandatory hours, but it helps every time they go to get.
Okay, I wondered about that too.
So
Yeah.
be prepared to write an appropriate letter.
That's what they said.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just like a job reform, you have to be write a good letter, you have to be specific about the skills that they use and how it impacts on your nonprofit.
Wonderful.
And you don't have to be a 501c3 to do that.
Very cool. See, I knew you guys would be a wealth of information. Yes, one more. Yes.
We learned that, I was in a private study church, but we learned that volunteer is the public's way of saying it, and most Christians' way of saying it is Christian service.
Christian service. Good to know. Yes. Very good. So if you are going to church, this is an inside scoop. You want to say, I'm looking for people who are interested in doing Christian service. Thank you. Use their terminology. That's why I said, when I started to talk about college students, I said internship, versus volunteer. Do you have internship, or would you like, a volunteer internship? Sound good? Oh, and just real quick, because my husband's a lawyer and he sent me something about this today. For-profits, be very careful with having interns be free. I'm not a lawyer, but just be careful. So this is not for nonprofits where you can do an internship for free. Okay, next one. Keeping volunteers. I had a picture of handcuffs. That's not what we want to do. So as much as we would like to chain Leah to this chair and say never, 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 never leave, right, Linda? Yes. I swear I don't have handcuffs. We can't, but we would like to. The idea with keeping volunteers is really keeping a good relationship. It's almost like keeping a good friend. If you maintain the relationship with that person, you're going to help keep them. Know what it is they want. Know whether it's the type of work, unpaid work, of course, but the type of work they want to do, the kinds of things they like to talk about. Just be interested, and that's my best recommendation, is treat them like you would want to keep a good friend. So keeping volunteers is about having an agreement and clarity of expectations, knowing exactly what it is that you are wanting out of them and they are wanting out of you, and you guys are clear on that, and then you make that happen. It's much like having an employee. You wouldn't want to come in and say, I'm not sure what I need you to do. We'll figure it out together. You want to have some training figured out. If there is some training involved, you want to have clear expectations, written position descriptions, And really, if you combine treat them like a friend and treat them like an employee, somewhere in between is where you're going to find a volunteer. You want to be very, very clear, because how many of you have ever showed up to volunteer and they weren't organized enough to tell you what you need to do, and you're just kind of waited? And how excited were you to be there? Yes. The resounding answer is a thumbs down. Or upset faces if you didn't see that. It is a waste of your time. And would you ever do that with an employee? It's happened to you, right? Okay, but they should call me. But that is not an exciting thing to show up. One of the main reasons that volunteers stick around is they are making a difference. Why do you come? If you weren't making a difference, would you be here? If it wasn't helping anyone? Heck no. I do way too much for the nonprofits I'm on the board, and I know this as I'm sitting like sometimes 10 o'clock at night working for free on stuff when I should be in bed, hanging out with my family or whatever, and yet I do it because I'm making a difference at the core of it. So if you're not being utilized, you don't feel like you're making a difference.
I was going to say, I've only had a few events so far, but what I did for my volunteers is, like what you said, I asked the lights, I did their timing, like how much time, and then I asked the dislikes and what they don't want to do. So I kind of know what to not asking for if I'm short on the other end.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like you have to know both sides
Yes.
in advance.
Yeah, it's really job matching.
Yeah.
You would want to do the same thing with a paid employee, or if yourself going into somewhere, it's like, is this the kind of stuff I want to do? So that is key, is just to get those expectations clear from both sides and to make an agreement. This is what we're going to do. And then treat them with the respect that you would as an employee. The other thing I would say with keeping volunteers is what we'll go into is it's important to recognize them. And then we're going to go into that a little bit more, but that's another side of it, and motivate them, which is the two last pieces. So these all kind of fit well together. But in terms of moving on to motivating volunteers, this is the same thing for motivating people. Motivating people is to actually make sure you're meeting their needs. One of our needs as human beings is the need to make a difference, to feel important, to make some sort of impact. You could say purpose, you could say, any sort of thing of that passion, whatnot. But we like to feel important, and one of the ways we feel important is when we help someone or we have directly or even indirectly made a difference in somebody's life, usually in a positive way. One of the things that I did when I was working in K-12, kindergarten through 12th grade, is that we would often have programs with very low-income, at-risk youth who would often do graffiti or some sort of disruption in the community or in their classroom or whatnot. And people would say, oh my gosh, they're never going to want your community service. It's just too good. It's like, that is so not what they want. They were the most receptive and did the most incredible work. What we were reaching out to was the same thing they were doing to get attention through graffiti and through making, rude statements or however they got in trouble kind of thing. But it's the same sort of human nature, is that they want to be noticed. They want to be important. That's why you do graffiti. So when you can tap into that in a positive way, they responded extremely well. And of course, all the fun things that came after that, graduated from high school, more likely to college, all that stuff. But really what is key for you to know is that we tap into human needs. So I'm going to ask for a little bit of help. Linda or somebody, because I should have worn shorter shoes to get up and down this thing. Right here is a handout with a triangle on it, if you don't mind passing it around. I do have pins for everybody. I'm just going to grab light too. Try not to hit the mic. Sorry about that. No, I'm good. I got one. Just one. Just one.
When I saw it came in, I was like,
Does everyone have one with the triangle? Triangle is it? Yep. If we have time, yes. Yeah. It is, yes. I'll do my best to get there. So, first of all, one of the reasons that we often treat volunteers kind of carefully, or we don't want to give them too much, is we're kind of afraid of losing them, or maybe we don't trust them. We're not sure that they can handle it, that type of thing. Does that sound familiar? Oh, let's let them file because I'm not sure that they can handle accounting. Anyone sound familiar? So my encouragement is you let them handle whatever they can handle, just like you would an employee. I am seeing everything you can possibly see. I'm not saying I do this, but I could steal a ton of money for the nonprofits I'm on the board from. I'm their treasurer. I've got a check signing. You know, I'm in their QuickBooks. I could do a ton of terrible things. I never, ever would do that. But I'm a volunteer. I'm not paid. So think about that. You get the right person in the right job, they're going to do a good job. And, you know, I'm redesigning their entire accounting program for free. Like I said, it's crazy. I am a crazy volunteer in a different way than what you're talking about. But the point is, you can do incredible things with a volunteer. Don't undersell them that they can only do blah, blah, blah. Events are great for one time, but I really want to encourage you to have someone who's a long-term volunteer like we have here. That's what we're trying to do, is clone you two. So make sure that you have something that is not just like easy, or I don't want to, you know, put too much on your plate. Ask them what they want. It doesn't have to be that you have to walk on eggshells. Oftentimes, nonprofits do that because they're afraid of losing them, or they're afraid of mistakes. And my thing is, treat them like an employee. You know, hold them accountable, keep them responsible. Make sure you got guidelines and deadlines, and you're going to have a better time. So now that you guys have this, I wanted to share with you, this is, anyone familiar with Maslow's needs, hierarchy of needs? That's what this is, and my own little kind of tweak to it. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the reason I'm sharing this with you, and there's little lines next to it, the reason I'm sharing this with you is that this is what needs you want to meet, if not all of them, a good amount of them with your volunteer. So when you're trying to motivate someone, you meet their needs, they're motivated. I don't care if you're paid or not. So starting with the bottom one, the physiological needs for food, water, sleep, warmth, etc. How often we're meeting those needs is with money, which is what that line is. Getting paid, those kinds of things. So that's probably not going to be what you do with your volunteers, although volunteers do like food, so you can give them that, and free water is also very helpful. But one of the things is that people think doing work, they're only motivated by money. Would you agree? It's a misconception, but they think, oh, I can give you the harder stuff or more hours only when you're paid. It's not true. That's just one of these. So if we move up, there's other things that people want, and you can test for yourself. Do I want these things? Is this what I need? And if you say yes, then you're probably like most of the people on the planet. So the next one is safety, feeling safe, feeling secure, freedom, maybe your health. You're kind of in control of your life, and so having a volunteer that shows up and doesn't know what they're doing is against safety. They don't feel like they're in control. They don't know what you're doing. So that's why that doesn't work. Now, on the counter side, this is why I said have those expectations and that clarity so that they feel safe, they're secure, they know what they're doing. And then the next one is love. Your favorite, huh, Allie? She's my little love bug. With love, and I do want to thank you for letting, especially Linda, letting my children be here, because I found out this week that my husband got tickets last minute to Comic-Con. So that was more important than that. So thank you for being understanding with that. So love, this is something that we crave, and this is actually one of the best things for volunteers that we can give. Again, it's free. Love in the form of belonging, feeling like you're part of a team. You feel like, Leah, you can tell me I'm wrong, but do you feel like you're part of this team? For Linda and Amanda, you too? I mean, you feel like you're part of something, right? You're treated like family. There's friendship, there's connection with others. So I would go to Volunteer San Diego, and I left a very well-paid position at the biggest accounting firm in the world as a manager to go work part-time for a nonprofit. I did not go for the money. I went for love and some other stuff, which I'll share with you in a minute. But I would say my work feels like a family. That's how you know when somebody says, oh, it feels like a family, I feel like I'm treated like family, they're getting that love benefit. And that's why they're motivated. That's why they're showing up. So when you put the two of those together, love and safety, what people are also looking for in the little line next to it, if you want to put in, is autonomy. They want to have a say in their task, who they're working with. They want to have some independence and freedom. And oftentimes you don't get that at work, although that's part of what I'm trying to help people do, is give that to people at work. But they want that out of their volunteering. I get to say what projects I get to do. I get to say who I get to work with. So if you can give them some autonomy, but also some control, you want to make sure they have expectations. So it's a combination of some freedom to choose what you want to work on, but within some constraints so you're not having them go hog wild and crazy and you don't know what they're doing. Make sense? Okay, the next level is self-esteem. And again, you tell me I'm wrong. If you don't see you want this, then that's a sign. But if you do, then it's also you're being your own social scientist. Like, yeah, I guess other people would want that if I do. Self-esteem and recognition, accomplishment, mastery, confidence, respect. This is something that we crave as people, and so for this is why volunteers are often recognized. It's directly meeting this need. And you also see in their mastery, that means you're doing a good job. So if you just keep having them pick up trash, there's not much mastery in that. But having them maybe rise to the occasion or grow or train them into a new position is actually motivating, which is good news, yes? You can have them do more work at a higher level, and it might actually get them more excited to show up. In fact, it probably will. So the little line across from that is mastery, that people crave mastery in their work. It's motivating to feel like I'm doing a good job and I'm growing and I continue to be recognized for my skills and talents and knowledge. Last one is a big word, self-actualization. And I have finally figured out how to say that without messing it up. It's a big word. What it means is creativity, fulfillment, meaning, inner potential. This is where the passion comes out, making a difference. When you know clearly that the volunteer work you're doing somehow makes a difference, it makes you want to show up. And that's what also had me show up and not get paid so much at Volunteer San Diego. Because I volunteered with them for 3 years before I got paid. And then I got less money by working there. So I am one of those crazies, but the kind you probably want to keep around. So with self-actualization, you want to put purpose, that they can be creative, they can have some sort of make a difference, show their inner talents with you. So one of the things that I got really smart on, my husband is not as into volunteering as me, but it's hard to do this with my children listening. It's funny. Normally I could do this with freedom. So what I would do is I would trick him into volunteering with me by asking him to take pictures. And the main reason is it's his passion. He loves it. So he had fun, and I wanted him to kind of see what I was doing, and I needed someone to take pictures anyway. So that's a perfect example of how to trick someone into volunteering by saying, come do your passion. So the little lines on the side, except for money, are the motivators that come out of Daniel Pink's book, Drive. And it's more about getting people motivated for work, but it actually works very, very well in the nonprofit world. So Drive, if you want to read that, is an incredible book. And it's really, actually, people asked Brian and myself when I started Institute for Mastering Success, did we do it based on the book Drive? And I said, I've never read that book, and I kept getting asked, so I decided to read the book. And it was the science and the social science and the understanding behind what we did effectively with volunteers and students. And it's because of those motivators, making sure they're on purpose, there's some passion involved, some care for what they're doing, creativity, mastery, doing a good job, continuing to be recognized, and of course, autonomy, giving them some freedom to choose. Like, for example, the volunteers or the interns out of the event management group, they want that freedom to be able to try their job out. So motivating really comes to if you can somehow, as much of those needs get met with your volunteers, you are going to, in fact, have an incredible time getting them to stay around. So the next one is recognition. Right above that triangle is a very long, but I want to make sure they got very good credit. Great website that has like pages and pages of different ways to recognize volunteers. Most are free. I'm not going to go into it much. You understand the need out of looking at the motivation. But for example, the very first page, I have it somewhere. The very first page of that link is 101 ways to recognize a volunteer, and it starts with a smile. So these are how to keep it within your budget. Some of it are a little bit more, thank you cards, all the traditional things, but I'll leave that out if you want to take a look at it. But that's where that website is, and to be able to send you to that place so you can get all those wonderful, wonderful resources. Okay, next. What I want you to see is on the bottom, right under the little triangle or pyramid, is an activity. And do I have 10-ish, 5-ish minutes? 6 minutes. Okay. Close. I tried. Did you see that? Try to get 10. There's a little activity, and I want you to take, well, we're going to say 2 minutes. Take 2 minutes and list what would be your ideal volunteer. And again, if you're not in a volunteer place, what would be your ideal employee? What would be your ideal helper? It doesn't really matter. Just list some characteristics, like maybe they're responsible or accountable, or behaviors, that they show up on time, that they have integrity, and what are maybe some of the skills. Just pick one volunteer and just spend, like I said, 2 minutes writing down everything you can think of that's an ideal volunteer. One more minute. It's okay if you don't finish. Just get at least 5 if you can. Things that you would want out of a volunteer or an employee or someone to help you. If you finish, you can move on to the next part. Next, I want you to put a star by, think of a volunteer or the volunteers that you have or people you're working with. Put a star by all those attributes, behaviors that exist. You're like, yep, my people have this. Only start if they have it, okay? Like all of them. Everyone has integrity or whatever you wrote down. Put a star by it if it's clear that that is happening for your people and your organization. Bless you. Got your stars? With your stars, these are your star, volunteer qualities, etc. These are the things you don't need to work on. I want you to right now pat yourself on the back, because you've got that happening. You've got either the right people or right qualities. Where there's work to be done is at all the things that are not starred. These are what are the gaps. And what there is to do is take what we've learned today and start to fill the gaps. In other words, if there's some lack of accountability, which often happens with volunteers, then look at how can I have maybe a more of agreement or hold them more accountable or ask them, to be a little bit more on time. And if not, there can be some consequences. We may need to find you a different job or this may not work. And don't be afraid. You would rather get rid of your trash to find treasure. Sorry to put it that way, but that's what ends up happening. Now, we're not going to do the second part, but it's the same idea. On the next page, turn it over. You can do this on your own. This is a little bit more about what you are responsible for, not just the people you have, but what you're responsible is the work environment that you provide. What would be ideal work environment that you provide in finding and keeping and motivating your ideal? So that might be that you have job descriptions in place, that you have some training. Think about a work environment that you already have some recognition in place. So the same thing, you want to write down what would be ideal work environment for you or anyone that would I want to make sure I'm clear in what I'm doing. I have a supervisor. I got my training. What would be the ideal work environment? Star what you have. Circle what you don't. What you don't is what you got to work on. Those are your gaps to fill. So you can do that on your own. What I want to show you is right under that is the consistent action steps. These are the steps that we use. It's not what we created. It's just what we figured out, and most people have, that if you follow these steps, you'll reach your goal. So with these circles, or where you have the gaps, the things for you to work on, now you have a goal to improve parts of your volunteer program. And that's your first step, is the goal. Create the goal. And so we helped you, hopefully today, at least get that started so you can start to have some clarity on where do I begin. Instead of just oh my gosh, I have to do a volunteer thing. Now you have some clear pieces to work on instead of, oh geez, I got to do everything. Make a plan. And I can help you with that too. We're going to pass around the sheet. Maybe Linda, that other clipboard, you can pass it around. Don't forget, I'm here to help you with that action plan. And it's free. I'm not going to charge your employers. That's good news. So make that plan. Figure out, how will I start to do these things? What information do I need? Maybe I don't know everything, but what information do I need to start to fill those gaps? And then, of course, once you have that, you got to work that plan and stick to it. You also need accountability. Make sure you stick with the plan. The moment we lose our own motivation and our own focus, we got to start all over again. So remember for yourself, that pyramid, where can I add motivation for myself? Perfect. And then guess what happens? Woohoo! You achieve your goal. Yay! You got great volunteers. You're not doing all the work you didn't want to do. You're not staying up till 2 in the morning. This is I can't promise, it won't be midnight, but it's better than 2. So, and then of course at the very bottom, if you can just take a chance to say what's one action step you will take related to what you discovered today. So at the bottom, what action step will I take within a week? So by next Thursday. Today's Thursday, right? Just making sure. By next Thursday, what's one action step I will do to improve my volunteer program? So thank you. Make sure if you do want me to help you with that plan to tell me so I can find you. It's much easier that way. Unless you have a GPS. I do appreciate you guys taking the time. There's 100 other things you can do today, and you came to hear this. I don't only appreciate it because you listened to me and you didn't run out screaming. Thank you for that. But I also appreciate it on behalf of your volunteers. They deserve to have an opportunity where they can make a difference. It makes us all feel good, and you giving them that opportunity in a really great way is one of the things that makes me very, very happy. So more people out there doing what they love, helping the world, that we're all going to make a change. So thank you very much to Linda.
Thank you. So go ahead and stay up there. Does anybody have any questions? I know you wanted to discuss crazy volunteers, but before we get into the crazies, does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, wait, hold on, Michelle. I'm coming over.
I belong to an organization, and we had a volunteer that we all kind of wondered about him. And the bottom line is, in the end, we did find out he was on pretrial release for a federal crime. And it's expensive to do background checks. I started poking around and probably spent maybe $150 all together in the end after a couple of months. Is there any place to get that information for less cost or for free to do background checks on volunteers?
I wish I had a good answer for that. I don't because unfortunately it's a service. However, what you might do is see if you can partner with another nonprofit and just find out if they'd be willing to help you do a volunteer, if they've already got it kind of paid
If they're
for.
already established with
It
with
might at
money.
least reduce it. So maybe a similar animal organization or whatnot, or maybe you have just some sort of way of kind of asking some good questions. But this kind of goes to crazies. Do you have one?
Okay, hold on. Hold on, please. Hold on. Because we do videotape. No, we videotape this, and it goes into the mic.
All right. There's a national database for perverts, etc. You can check that first. And in San Diego, it's still free to check the courtroom. You just go online to San Diego Superior Court and go under federal, etc., etc. And that's 85% of the legal liability that you're going to have.
I looked on that Megan's list, but it's like, you don't really you just get a map with little dots.
There's other ways to look up people's names. Yeah.
There's another one too.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna speak. So at Girl Scouts, we do background screenings on every volunteer that's over 18, and we do use a service, and it's paid for. But another thing that I found, because sometimes people don't want to provide their social and things like that, so we're only able to do a name match, and that sometimes isn't as thorough, is we call references, and that's like a free way, but maybe making it mandatory to have 3 references, and then you kind of use your gut feeling on that one if they don't have any, or if they're like, a little bit weary of the person, so.
Yeah.
Also, you call the California Justice up in Sacramento, and they'll tell you the procedure. I think it costs about $50 or $60 where they go get electronically fingerprinted, and they run it through their department. And if there's any history in the last probably 70 years, it'll show up.
Okay, so there's
Do you have
that.
a question or another resource?
No, I was actually going to kind of ask for, actually, he kind of bit on it, but does that only cover California, or what if they're out of state and then come? So because I do, a lot of my events are with children also, so it's definitely, yeah. So does anybody know of anything?
Well, the NCIS is the national. It has something to do with fingerprinting and stuff, and you can. I'm sure there's places you can run it through. Does anybody know for sure what the organization is?
Like services that you can use, I don't know. I don't think I'm answering your question, but what I was gonna say is, there's national searches and then county searches that you can go to each county and search somebody's name, but there's also, you got to be careful if you were to deny someone due to a background screening. There's a procedure in place that you'd have to provide them with the screening, like a letter, and also there's another form that they have to receive, because in turn they could actually sue you for that.
Sorry, but I'm doing an event, and this is really sensitive because of the girls. So are we allowed to add on a disclaimer, for the volunteers, and put specifically what we're looking for? So for mine, can we just literally put that our volunteers are invitation only?
I don't see why not. I mean, part of what I was saying too is get referrals from people, so then you have a little bit of, kind of comes with a reference type of thing. But you can be selective with who you have in your volunteers. You can do an interview process and all of that same sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no reason you can't choose someone or not. And especially if you're interviewing many people and you only have certain pieces, some people are just not going to be chosen.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we got 1 minute left, so talk about the crazies.
Well, my biggest thing is, and it kind of goes to a little bit about what you're saying, is you do have the ability to fire a volunteer. I mean, you want to be careful, but it's kind of follow the same rules as you would an employee. Again, just follow those same guidelines. You're going to be okay. But you do have the ability to fire a volunteer. Again, that helps with the accountability and whatnot. You're welcome to say goodbye to someone. But I want to hear specifically if you had, any situations, or was there a certain question about that?
Well, occasionally crazy volunteer has benefits to the organization. We don't necessarily want to get rid of that specific person, but they don't play well with others.
Okay.
Especially in the animal world, it just draws crazy people. But a lot of them are good-hearted. A lot of them have skills that can help the animals, but I spend a lot of time monitoring this, and my time can be used better elsewhere.
Yeah, it's a management issue, essentially. And what I would say is start with job placement. Maybe there's a different kind of job that you can invite them to do that would be more matched for their skills. And if their people skills are missing, kind of thing.
Almost universally.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you might just be really good about being very clear when you're interviewing. Say, here's what we're looking for. We need people who get along with animals and people, because there is a lot of time where we're working with others. And go into a lot of specifics and examples and just say, is this something that is going to really fit for you? So doing a good kind of screening up front and be very specific about all of the people skills side that's required. Put it in the job description and help that way too.
That's a really good idea.
And that's a good point, because a lot of people know they don't work well with people. I'll tell you, I don't.
You might scare them away. Like, oh my God, I have to work with people. I thought I was just going to work with dogs.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, they're like, I work great with animals, but I don't work well with people. So they'll know that. They know that. So anyway, we're done. Thank you guys so much for coming tonight.